Welcome back, Chappelle. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your flip classroom, and my voice is shot. All right, so big thing about it is I'm not supposed to yell during this flip, right? I've been told specifically by my wife that I'm not supposed to yell during these flips and stuff like that, or during this flip, and I'm supposed to speak smoothly and eloquently to prevent my voice from cracking again and stuff like that because of whatever drainage issue. I'm not sick. I don't get sick. But the big thing about it, though, is I can't shout, okay? So I'll turn up the audio on this a little bit just so it's easier to hear. But we're going to pick right where we left off in class today. And we left off talking about the Glorious Revolution in England, right? We were discussing the Glorious Revolution in England that occurred under the rule of James II, right? Brother of Charles II, sons, the both of them, of Charles I that got killed by Cromwell after the English Civil War, right? Remember that guy, Charles I? You know the one. You know him. The guy that literally wouldn't stop hiring and firing Parliament and dissolving them over and over again because he wanted more stuff, and he ruled by himself for 11 years. Exactly. All that stuff, right? Now, as you can already tell, there's a lot of people in this unit, right? And the people are the crux of the entire unit. So I'm going to start working on that Quizlet tonight, and I'll have it posted by this evening, okay? So keep an eye out for it and stuff like that, but let's dive straight into it. We left off in class talking about the Glorious Revolution, right? Why was this revolution so glorious? Make sure you have this written down, because not a drop of blood was spilled in this revolution, right? And what a revolution is, just so you understand what it is in general, is a forcible overthrow of a government or social order in favor of another. And that's exactly what happened in this event. James was ran off and ran out of England by his daughter, Mary, and her husband, William, right? Because he was an open Catholic and the English Parliament was highly against it. So William and Mary will be the new ones that ascend the throne, and they're going to be a co-monarchy that rules with authority, but also gives equal ruling power to the Parliament, right? They come in, they write the English Bill of Rights, which includes freedom of speech, free elections, and they create a very systematic, limited monarchy that the English now know, use, and love. And it's going to try its best to avoid this entire kerfuffle with a guy trying to become an absolutist ever again, right? Because the thing about it is, nothing stops the Magna Carta. Yeah! Exactly. And the English Bill of Rights is basically like the Magna Carta. Yeah! 2.0, right? So getting into it though a little bit is William and Mary come to power after the Glorious Revolution, after after her dad James flees in that rowboat, heads on to France. Now speaking of France though, by the way, nothing stops the Magna Carta. Speaking of France, though, we're now moving into France, right? So go ahead and create a brand new section in your notes that's just going to be labeled France in like really, really big letters, okay? France, like right there across the top. France. Now, like so, real fast, we're now moving over to absolutism in France. Now, the thing that we have to go ahead and understand really, really quickly is we're now going to be traveling backwards in time again, right? Going back to the era of the 1500s and stuff like that before Elizabeth ever even died and understanding the rise of a new family in France. So we have just fast forwarded all the way up to 1688 in England. We're now jumping backwards almost 100 years, right? And I know that makes some of y'all sad, and I know some of y'all want to cry about that, but we're going to get over it and we're going to move on, all right? So but what you need to understand about France in the late 1500s is the fact that they are very weak for two particular reasons, right? They are weak because they have very weak kings from this one specific family that we'll talk about here in a couple of seconds. And then also they are weak from a series of wars of religion that have began to break out following the Reformation period, right? Now, the thing about it that you need to understand is that these wars of religion are between Catholics and Protestants, right? This is like kind of one of those big things that we talked about at the beginning of this unit, that these wars, these religious wars between Protestants and Catholics are keeping many different countries very weak and very unstable, right? So the thing about it, though, is we always talked about France as being a place that was really decidedly Catholic, right? Everybody was like, oh, but I thought that France was super Catholic, Mr. Terry. Where did these Protestants show up? Well, in the 1500s, in the early 1500s, a type of French Protestant or French Calvinist shows up. So next to them, go ahead really quick and jot down Calvinist, right? They are a Calvinist sect, okay? Just like John Calvin and all the predestination stuff and the strict moral code, right? Now, what these French Protestants are called are known in French as Huguenots, right here, this word right here, or in English, Huguenots, right? All right, so make sure you understand who these people are. So the thing about these Huguenots, though, is that they're causing a massive set of issues in the government of France, right? A big key part of Calvinism and Calvinist doctrine is the idea that if you don't like your king and they don't follow the rules of God and Calvinism, then you don't have to listen to them, which makes this key number right here very, very important. See where it says 40% of the nobility, but only 7% of the population? Let's talk about those two key ratios and numbers, all right? So 7% of the French people had converted to being a Huguenot, right? Well, that's not a very significant number, but 40% of the nobility has converted to being a Huguenot, right? Why are those two numbers so significant? Because it's demonstrating to us that the nobility is converting for one particular reason. They want more power, right? They want more power. They just want more power so they can try their best to refuse and refute the ideas of the ruling family. And also because the Catholics have the crown, they got more military and they got more money, so they're trying to figure out anything they can do to actually have power of their own. Now, speaking of the royal family, the royals that were in charge at this time during all of this conversion stuff was known as the Valois family, okay? So do me a favor really quick, write the kings of France were Valois or something along that nature, okay? V-A-L-O-I-S, all right? The Valois family. So what you need to understand is that the ruling family under the Valois had gone through a series of very, very intense and weirdly awkward kings, right? The Valois family got a historic run of weak kings involved, right? Like this guy right here, that's Charles VI, aka Charles the Mad. He's from the Middle Ages. He thought he was made out of glass. He stabbed several of his bodyguards to death. We think that he might have been undiagnosed bipolar, and he also possibly watched like 3 of his best friends burn to death at this big birthday party thingy that he had, right? So the thing you need to understand about, though, is he was mentally insane. His son is the one that lost the throne during the 100 Years' War, Charles VII, and Joan of Arc had to put him back on the throne, right? And then this guy is Francis I, right? Francis I is the one that had a wrestling match with Henry VIII. He's the one that ran John Calvin out of town. Also, interesting little fact about him as well, Francis I bought the Mona Lisa and put it in his bathroom, right? He also let some old man live with him until the day he died, but we'll talk about that in class a little bit later on, right? So as you can tell, the Valois kings are a little bit nuts, a little bit weird, and a little bit crazy. Now, this one right here is a pretty important one, sort of, kind of, but as you can see, he's going to die, right? That right there is Henry II Valois. He's not as important, though, as his wife, okay? Do me a favor, write down his wife's name, okay? Henry II Valois was an important king in the sense that he was just a Valois king, right? Now, Henry II, though, what was much more important was the wife that he actually, or the woman that he was married to, his wife, because literally she would go on to rule in his stead after he died, because as you can see, he's going to die, right? So now look, her name is Catherine, Catherine de Medici. That's right, we've got a Medici in the French royal family, right? Catherine de Medici, the ultimate ice queen, the girl that doesn't mess around or play around, is going to be a very important player in this story, right? Now, this guy was her husband, but unfortunately what happened to him is he died. After the end of a war, he actually competed in a jousting match. Jousting is where you have the horses and the lances, you know what I'm talking about? And you charge at each other and try to knock each other off the horse, right? So what happened in Henry's jousting match is the lance actually collided with the other knight's armor, exploded, and a splinter went into his eye and killed him. Now, but that leaves Catherine de Medici as the Queen Regent of France, right? Well, as the Queen Regent of France, that means that she has to help her young sons rule. To give you a little bit of relation and understanding so you can know who these people are and know who they're related to, Henry II is one of the sons of Francis I, right? Henry II's brother was no, actually, that's not true. So, yeah, wait. Henry II was one of the sons of Francis I, and Henry II's one of his sons was Francis II, okay? That guy was married to Mary, Queen of Scots for a hot second, right? Now, the thing about it, though, is all the last Valois kings, all the children of Catherine de Medici and Henry II, were very, very weak, okay? Culminating with the weakest one out of all of them being this guy named Henry III, right? Now, the thing about it is Catherine de Medici was super, super, super aware that her family was dying out, that her sons were very weak, and also that she's got a series of religious wars on her hands in France that are ripping her country apart and killing thousands of people and leading to a huge issue. Now, as a very Catholic woman, she does one of the most aggressive things that anyone's ever seen. She gets her Catholic daughter, Margaret Valois, to marry a Protestant noble, a man by the name of Henry of Navarre, right? Now, the thing about it is, why is this moment important? Why is this such a big deal? Why is this such a big moment in French history? It's due to the fact that we are now linking another family in. So if something happens to Henry III over here, this Henry will become Henry IV, and a new family will take over France. So that's how this new line was created. Well, their wedding had a really, really crazy event that happened at it. Now, the crazier part about this whole story, though, right? Let's just quick recap and review. Catherine de' Medici marries one of the Valois, becomes Queen of France, rules over France for her weak sons, and then marries one of her Catholic daughters off to a Protestant noble by the name of Henry of Navarre, right? So the thing about it, though, is that the wedding between Margaret Valois and Henry of Navarre was like this really big moment in French history. And it has a nickname. It's also known as the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, right? Well, the big thing about it that you need to understand is the reason why this is such a big event. You're going to need to summarize the stuff that I'm about to say, okay? So you're going to need to, that's right, get out a pen and jot down a couple of key points about the story I'm about to tell you, okay? So what ended up happening, though, is Margaret Valois and Henry IV, or excuse me, not yet, Henry of Navarre, the Protestant noble, are about to get married. Catherine looks at Henry and says, you will have a public wedding. It will be a Catholic wedding, and you will convert to Catholicism as well. And Henry's like, all right, whatever, I'll do that. I'll do all that stuff for you so I can literally become linked up to the royal family. So if your son dies, I'll be king one day. Whatever, right? So anyway, what ends up happening, though, is the day of the wedding comes, right? The day of the wedding comes. It's the late 1500s. The day of the wedding comes, and all of these Protestant nobles show up in Paris. Why would they do this? Why would these Protestant nobles, who have been at war with Catherine de' Medici and her Catholic armies, roll up to a wedding in Paris underneath her nose, right? Because they feel as though they have won. Why do they feel as though they have won? Because one of their guys is getting married to the princess of France, right? So they feel as though like, we got nothing to worry about ever again. Well, 3 days after the wedding, following a series of crazy events of an attempted assassination, all this other crazy stuff, what happened is Catherine de' Medici locked the doors of Paris and massacred the nobles that had come to the wedding, right? As you can see, we've got headless bodies right here on the ground, right? We've got Catherine de' Medici standing in the background, counting dead people. And from what we understand, thousands of people died on this day. And literally, this is her standing out front of what is now the Louvre, the art museum, in front of the dead bodies of Protestant nobles. And they were massacred. And it reignited the French wars of religion. And ironically enough, her new son-in-law, Henry, went back to his people, went back to his friends, and started the wars back up again. Well, what's going to end up happening after a long series of events, though, is Henry IV will emerge victorious because Catherine de' Medici will die of old age. And then also her son, Henry III, got stabbed to death by a Protestant radical and stuff like that. By a Catholic radical and stuff like that. But Henry, now that the Valois are all dead, is going to become Henry IV, right? He is the Huguenot that married into the Valois family, and he becomes Henry IV of France because he's now the closest living relative to their royal lineage, right? And he is also known as the first Bourbon monarch, right? Now, the thing about it is we now have a new family, right? The Valois have transferred or transported into the Bourbon dynasty, right? Because of all of the events that have preceded this. He converts to Catholicism again because he has a famous quote that says, Paris is worth the mass, right? You can go ahead and write that down as well. Paris is worth the mass. That just basically means he's like, look, ruling over France is worth a longer mass or worth a different type of mass, whatever. But one of the first things he does as king of France, right, when he comes into power, is he writes this thing known as the Edict of Nantes, right? And the Edict of Nantes stated that Catholicism would be the official religion of France, but that Huguenots, okay, what he used to be, and the Protestants of France that have been waging war with these Catholics this whole time, can work in the government and worship freely, and they don't have to worry about being persecuted or having anybody go against them, right? And so this Edict of Nantes is going to be a very important moment because it's going to be the very first document since Charles V that's going to allow Protestants to freely operate inside of a country, right? So the thing about it, though, is Henry IV goes down in history being known as Henry the Great, right? So, like, now, because he is such a good monarch, but what ends up happening to him, just like happened to, like, the last Henry, he gets stabbed to death, right? He's actually assassinated by another Catholic radical who jumps into his carriage through the window and stabs him to death and stuff like that, leaving his son on the throne. So, yes, that's right. Henry has a son. Henry did have a son, and he has an heir to the throne, right? You don't want a Bourbon monarch to start up, the new Bourbon family to start up, which, by the way, the Bourbon monarchy that Henry IV started is why Bourbon Street is named Bourbon Street in New Orleans. So, now look, the big thing about it, though, is that you need to understand more than anything else is that he did have a son. Now, it wasn't with Margaret. When you go back and look at those family trees and stuff like that, when you take a look at gander at those family trees and start looking at all that different stuff, you'll know and realize and see the fact that, wait a minute, he didn't stay married to Margaret of Valois. They got an annulment, right? They got an annulment due to the fact after he ascends the throne and becomes king of France, they got an annulment because Margaret of Valois couldn't have any children. So he got married to this woman named Marie de Medici, and they had a son, right? And his son would be known as Louis the 13th, right? And he was 9 years old when he took the throne. 9 years old when he took the throne. But does anyone rule, actually, when they're 9 years old? No, no one rules when they're 9 years old. So the thing about it was, until he reached this age, his mom actually ruled for him because he was very, very young. He's also, even as an adult, a very soft guy, right? So his queen regent was his mom, known as Marie de Medici, right? The woman that married Henry IV after the fact, right? But the more important person is his chief minister, a man by the name of Cardinal Richelieu, who we will talk about more in class tomorrow. But I'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Review this content. Make sure you got it. I know it's a lot of stuff. That St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre thing is very, very important, okay? Highlight it, jump back, and listen to it again if you need to. Thank y'all for being chill with my voice being this cracked and messed up. But I'll talk to y'all soon. Y'all have a good one.